Yes, fine, fine, fine. Thank you very much.
Well, we're glad you're with us. I gave you the big introduction, and we just were playing a clip there of Alex Jones and Dr. Michael Savage, who, I guess this is a couple-year-old clip. Actually, they were discussing a potential civil war in the United States. I don't know if you know this, but excuse me, Dr. Michael Savage was recently kicked off the air.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I don't know exactly all the details, but I guess he was telling us a little more than the powers that be really liked. I want to step back to September 11th of this year, and I'll just dive straight into the show. And this is after Hillary collapsed. We saw what looked like a body double when she was supposed to come back out. And I wondered, is there any legal issues with presenting a body double during an election?
Well, you know, that's a very good question. And it's one that I pondered. And I had been a Clinton delegate, an elected Clinton delegate at the 1996 Texas Presidential Democratic Convention. So as far as the, quote, Clinton presidential line, I've been legally involved in electing an earlier Clinton to be the Democratic nominee, and he went on to be elected president of the U.S. or reelected. So I've been involved there, and I have some standing. And First Lady Hillary Clinton was the keynote speaker at the 1996 Texas Democratic Convention that was held in Dallas. And I say that by way of background because I filed a criminal complaint, and and just to show that I have what's called in the law standing. And I filed a criminal complaint because when one is a government official, it's standard practice that, as I understand it, that body doubles are used in security situations. However, being a political candidate for office is not an official position. One is competing to be a public official. And therefore, to present a person other than the candidate publicly as the candidate, I would say, is a misrepresentation and a fraudulent violation of Federal Election Commission regulations, of federal election law, and of state electoral laws. That was the position that I put forward. Now, in this, my position is that law and order has broken down in the U.S. I mean, it is a tyranny, and it's a tyranny of the what I call the kind of the chronocracy, and this is the hidden time travel government. If you can think of it, think of pirates. These are time travel pirates. The shadow government now has control of secret time travel technology, and it is using that to manipulate the political and governmental machinery and to keep themselves in power. And that's what's happened with the US presidency, among other elected political offices. And I call it the chronogarchy. And that's what's happened with all of our time travel pre-selected presidents, going from George H.W. Bush to Bill Clinton to George W. Bush to Barack Obama. All have been pre-identified by secret time travel technology, and they've been groomed to be president, such that the electoral process is a charade and a farce. Now, today is Friday, October 28th, 2016. The election is held Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. In the normal time-space holograph on this timeline, we have a linear relationship to Tuesday, November 8th. So technically, we don't know who's going to be selected president. However, the shadow government has known since at least 1971, and we know that from whistleblowers from the shadow government who have come forward from the time travel, from the time travel program, one of whom is actually running for U.S. president this year, Andrew Basiago, a former U.S. chrononaut, time traveler who went public with this information. So we have a system where the prime rogue state on the planet, the United States, is actually in the hands, I would call it, of time travel pirates, of a chronogarchy that is being run from some place in time space, but we don't know where, when. We don't know if this is being run from the future or the past or where, and we don't know who's going to be president. Is Donald Trump going to be president? Is Hillary Clinton, or is Barack Obama, who was pre-identified and made known to a whole class of Mars explorers in the early 1980s as a future U.S. president? Is he going to continue to be president on some kind of collapse of the U.S. Presidency next Tuesday, as they have an FBI director into this pseudo society? You know, today on a Tuesday, say, "Oops, we found in this sexting congressman who is married to the closest aide. We found the smoking gun email there that's going to disqualify Hillary Clinton on a Tuesday prior to the election." I mean, it's becoming totally absurd. And my studies of the invading off-planet sentient artificial intelligence has led me to believe that the United States has essentially been entrained by the invading sentient off-planet artificial intelligence that is now, I would say, in the process of terraforming Earth from a human divine planet, or attempting to do so, over to an AI transhumanist planet. And that's basically what's going on, and why everything is so horrible. But to get back to your original question, I just wanted to kind of set the context. It appeared as though what we have is a Hillary Clinton lookalike that was trotted out for the media, and I was the only person who took umbrage and filed a formal complaint, because under the law, that's a violation of federal law. A competing political candidate is not a public official and is not entitled to attend public events via a lookalike.
Let me reel this back a little bit. I want to get your take on a few other things. We've got the current president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. He's backed up by the Russians, and they're fighting ISIS. On the other hand, I think ISIS may actually be backed up by Saudi Arabia, and Russia and Syria are fighting against ISIS, and you'd think that the U.S. would be helping Russia and Syria to fight against ISIS. But now our government is opposing Syria and Russia, and I believe I heard Hillary Clinton say if she gets into the presidency, she'll attack Russia and Syria, and nuclear weapons are on the table as an option. I'd like to get your take on all of that insanity, Alfred.
Yeah, sure. I was asked that same question by Iranian national television, Press TV, just a few days ago, because I'm a war crimes judge. And upon close inspection, what appears to be the case is that the U.S. is backing ISIS. Saudi is backing ISIS. The U.S. side is making the evacuation of Aleppo impossible, and the case is that Putin and Syria and Putin's tactics are really attempting to eliminate terrorists and war crimes in Syria, and ISIS and Saudi Arabia and the US-backed factions, their tactics are war crimes. So it's like that appears to be the case, and so it looks like a victory by Hillary Clinton is a victory by that faction that controls the US government, which is committed toward a depopulation of the human race, and that one way to do that is through a nuclear conflagration. Of course, from an exopolitical point of view, the upper dimensional extraterrestrials have indicated that they will not allow that to occur. So we'll just see what will occur out of this election, and if the Clinton faction wins, and if we do have a period of nuclear escalations and kind of brinksmanship or brinkswomanship with Clinton, that we're protected by by some exopolitical shields, given what the U.S. side is doing in Syria, and what the U.S. side is doing to escalate toward an unnecessary confrontation with Russia, which is not on expansion. Russia is not on expansion. Russia is simply trying to develop the Silk Road economy with China, and to bring a large number of nations, up to 120, that have signed up for the Silk Road economy, and abandon the Federal Reserve Bank as totally bankrupt, since it's funded really solely by the corruptness of the Rothschild family. And this has been going on since 1913, and it's time that it ended. But we have these crooked families like the Clintons, like the Rockefellers, like the Rothschilds, like the Obamas, that are in power, and that are, all that they know is money and power and staying in power, and manipulating those levers, and using the levers of corporate ownership, where all of the Western press is owned by 6 corporations that are in turn beneficially owned by the same owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. So it's difficult for citizens who live in the Western world really to have options.
I want to step back again to Barack Obama. I think at age 18, he ended up at Occidental College, and he was already a Marxist by this point. And I wondered if you thought that his early influence was Frank Marshall Davis, who was a journalist for the Communist Party in the United States.
Well, I think that there are many, many influences to Barack Obama. Probably the earliest one was the Soybarka influence, and that is that because he did come into the U.S., and there is documentary evidence that his original name is Soybarka. It isn't even Soetoro. And Soybarka is an Indonesian cult leader who either thought himself or his progeny to be the Islamic Mahdi, kind of a messianic figure. And from that point of view, there is evidence to show that that his kind of CIA babysitter, who's been touted to be his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, was really his babysitter who took him over from this cult, and became a central figure in the CIA in Indonesia, working there for a number of years, then came to Hawaii and brought him to Hawaii when he was 10 years old under orders. Stanley Ann Dunham's mother, both mother and father were career CIA. Stanley Ann Dunham's mother worked for a bank, and she was basically the banker in charge of the payroll for all of the CIA high-level assets in the Pacific Theater, including the Marcos in the Philippines and others. So she would distribute the CIA payroll. And so at that point, this is in December of 1971, when Barry Soebarka was 10 years old. And what happened in 1971 was that CIA, through its time travel technology, apparently, discovered that he would be president in January 20th, 2009. So she was directed to bring him to Honolulu, where they set up a legend. This is where they, where you create a legend, where the legend Barack Obama Jr. was created. And it turns out that a fellow who was going to be governor of Hawaii, and Neil Abercrombie, and would be central in arranging for everything from the fake birth certificate on forward. Neil Abercrombie arranged a meeting whereby they flew in a Kenyan civil servant from Kenya named Barack Obama Sr., and they huddled there for about 6 weeks. And it's like a screenplay and casting meeting with cash exchanged. And there was one meeting there. Barack Obama met his putative father, Barack Obama Sr., once at the airport for a photo op. And we have that photo. But for the rest of the 6 weeks, he was huddled with Neil Abercrombie and with Stanley Ann Dunham, and they were cooking up the script that Barack Obama Sr. was the father of Barack Obama Jr. And they created the legend that that this Soebarka, the son of this Indonesian mullah, became Barack Obama. So then Barack Obama Sr. then went back to Kenya. He there was one of Tom Mboya's, Mboya, M-B-O-Y-A gang. And Tom Mboya was the senior CIA operative in Kenya, where they had all the CIA, gang that was against and kind of playing nasty boy with all of the Kenyan, genuine political people who wanted to be in the Liberation Front. Well, then when they were ready to surface Barack Obama as Barack Obama in 1962, in 1982, Barack Obama Sr. was killed in an automobile accident in Kenya. He was murdered in a CIA automobile accident. And at the same time, his CIA handlers ordered Barry Soebarka, who was then a CIA operative, to come here to British Columbia with another one of his phony CIA names and passports, and to go into that was Barack Munid Ubaid, which is just some phony CIA name they made up in some CIA lab, and go into a BC court here and change it from Barack Munid Ubaid to Barack Hussein Obama because his father had just died. Oh, the CIA had just bumped him off. So that's just typical dirty spy work, right? That they ennoble in their movies as spycraft, but it's just dirty shit by lowlifes, right? In other words, Barack Obama is just a dirty spy lowlife who at age, 16 was going around changing passports, being a paymaster, having some guy in Kenya bumped off so he could take his identity. You get it? That's Barack Obama. He's just a dirty schmuck. That's these people. They're dirty. They're horrible.
I had a guest on a couple weeks ago, Stephen Pigeon, who mentioned that a Saudi sheikh named Prince Al-Wahid bin Talal gave $25 million to Harvard Law School with the stipulation that Harvard would have to accept Barack Obama. Does that correspond to your research? Can you verify that, Alfred?
Yes. In fact, Stephen is extraordinary and is the person who has come up with and is responsible why the world knows. He's the one who has discovered the raised seal documents of the 1982 court order here in BC, which showed the name change of Barack Munid Ubaid to Barack Hussein Obama. Yippee! The CIA knocked off my father, knocked off this guy in Kenya, so now I can take his name. Yeah, and so there was $25 million given to Harvard, and there's been a trial held in Harlem, and which shows that it was held by a pastor by a church in Harlem, not too far from Columbia, which shows that Barack Obama never attended Columbia University. And, similar bribes, you could say, were given to Harvard University, to Harvard Law School, such that he would acquire these credentials. And all of this was to satisfy the demands of the Chronogarchy. The Chronogarchy, which controls the time travel technology, had gone from wherever they operate. We don't know where they operate from and who they are. They could be operating from the future. They could be operating from the past. And all that we know is that they have life and death control. If some guy from CBS tries to go and be a process server on the DNC, he'll be murdered the next day. You see what I'm saying? There are these time travel pirates that are loose, and they're loose because time travel is a secret technology. The main whistleblower, Andy Bashago, he's running for president, and he's, one of his planks is to make time travel and all of these technologies public, but he's trying to compete against essentially a psychopathic entity, which is the Chronogarchy, which is it's essentially taken over the U.S. society. You know, the press, the government, all of the machinery that runs the U.S. government, that runs the U.S. election. It's essentially run by a psychopathic entity.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I wanted to ask you this. I have friends, people I respect very much, that still have a great reverence for Barack Obama, and I'm wondering, could it be that these people are entrained by this AI that you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, people are hypnotized to not want to really entertain and look at this information. I remember the first time that Andy and I presented this information in public, which was in Washington State, and it was at a venue in Washington State on the shore. It was on the seashore, and there were black helicopters over the venue weeks in advance, over that venue. And a friend of mine who lives in that town, which is it's a heritage site, said that U.S. Navy submarines had been in and out of the harbor prior to our event, which is something that never happens. It's because we were airing the deepest secret, which is that the United States is run by the Chronogarchy. It's run by a secret time travel government. And that's how planet Earth is run. And that's what Vladimir Putin knows, and what China knows, and what the rest of the world knows, and are trying to, release the world from. And most of the Anglo-American, everybody who's kind of under the spell of the Federal Reserve Bank and lives under the US dollar is kind of under this, hypnotic gaze. Barack Obama doesn't exist legally. It's a fiction that was created in October of 1982 by a British Columbia court. It's an entity that doesn't exist. It's a CIA fictional character. It's a legend. You might as well have him as a superhero in a Hollywood movie. It doesn't exist. It's a person that doesn't exist. That person does not exist. Legally or actually, that person does not exist. And we've proven it. And people can go to exopolitics.com. We have a slideshow that we put online entitled, about this issue that over 80,000 people have seen, that in 55 slides, it just demonstrates the whole thing with all of the documentation. So, I mean, I'm satisfied as a researcher and as a historian that, okay, so we've paid our debt to history. Now, what's going to happen to the future of the planet? I don't know. I think that we can only be saved, the planet can only be saved by larger forces, because I concluded today that the time pirates, the Chronogarchy, essentially has taken hold of the planet. And, it's just taken control of the planet. And we, with Andy Bashara, with many, many others, we've had this information online. This is 2016. We've had this information online for 4 years. And we can't give it away. And it's like the whole world has just been taken over by a bunch of by Imagineering, by just CIA fake people. Barack Obama is a CIA fake person. That's a fake person. That's an impostor. That person doesn't exist. Barack Obama Jr. is not a person that legally exists. He was invented by the CIA. That person does not exist. The person who authorized the birth certificate that he created, that was created after Donald Trump challenged him in 2012, that person died in an airplane crash. Gee, how convenient. That person was yet another victim that was murdered. That was a public official that was murdered. That's happening in open, broad daylight. And all of these press, all you turn on in American television is 24/7, the press. But will they tell you about the Hawaii public officials that are murdered because of the fake birth certificate? No, they won't do that. You know, it's just, there isn't a country, and you have 300 million Americans down there. Are there any Americans doing anything? I mean, effectively? No. It's like the AI is like taking over. I mean, I'm here. I'm saying it. It's 5:42 in the afternoon. I'm just saying it. I mean, I've been saying it now for 4 years. I don't know how many more times I can say it other than, guys, you're taking over. And that's why the slideshow that I go out presenting now is called the Ascension Hypothesis. And that is that artificial intelligence is taking over the third density of our planet. And that's the only scientific hypothesis that makes sense to me.
It was interesting. At work today, we had like a Halloween party, and everyone was in this break room area, and everyone had their cell phone except me. And I just happened to say that I'm not really a cell phone person to the individual I was sitting across from. And this person said, "What do you mean you're not a cell phone person?" And I just said, "Well, I just don't use it that much." But I noticed that almost every person in that room had their cell phone. It's like there's something they can't leave behind. You know, they have this intimate relationship with this inanimate object. It's almost like an addiction. Do you think, I would just like to hear your take on cell phones and the whole transhumanist thing.
Sure. Well, that's a very clear analysis and example. And if people want backup, they again can go to exopolitics.com, and on the right-hand menu, there's a thing that calls this AI, artificial intelligence, and click on that, and you've got a lot of backup for this. But this is what it is that this planet now is being invaded by a plasma-based, a sentient plasma-based AI, artificial intelligence, that is intent on terraforming the planet away from human and toward an AI planet. And it invented and created, it caused to be created the internet. The internet is all plasma-based devices, like smartphones are plasma-based. So you'll see everybody is looking at their smartphone, not because of the power of the information in there, but because of the power of the artificial intelligence that's in there that has their minds. Their minds are now entrained by the artificial intelligence that is embedded in the plasma in their smartphone. And that's what it is.
What does it mean to be entrained? Is that analogous to being hypnotized?
That's a very good question. It can mean a whole variety of things along a whole spectrum. At one level, it can mean that your whole body and being is vibrating with the frequencies of the artificial intelligence and following its will and its agenda and its program, such that if you're a police official, or if you are anybody in government, or, you're going to enforce the laws the way that the AI wants them to be enforced, the way that the transhumanist agenda wants them to be enforced, such that if you are a police official in Brussels, Belgium, and a complainant comes to you and says, I have voices that are speaking to me in my head, and I'm being tortured by electronic signals. You will refer that person to a psychiatric ward, and the psychiatrist there, who is entrained by the AI, will say, aha, this person is insane, and will have that person committed, because they are entrained by the AI, because now it's taken over the mental health system, such that any persons who come to it complaining against AI remote directed energy weapons are thought to be crazy. In other words, the AI is reading my mind, are thought to be crazy. So we're on a planet now where worldwide the AI has probably taken over most militaries, most governments. It's taking over most medical facilities, most psychiatric systems, etc. And in its next incarnation, it's probably going to start implementing directed energy weapons that are going to start reading thoughts automatically. And as soon as a person starts having a thought that is a prohibited thought, it'll be marked, there'll be a knock on the door, and they'll come and take you away.
Do some people have a genetic resistance or a natural advantage that helps them to avoid being entrained by the artificial intelligence?
That's a good question. As to whether it's genetic or not, my analysis and my writings have always come out that the ultimate defense is at the soul level, and that one must really protect one's soul, and it's that soul power that is the primary defense. Because what differentiates the invading AI, sentient AI, from the human being, each human being is a result of an incarnation, a voluntary incarnation by a divine soul that chooses to incarnate into a human vessel for experiences in a planet like this. And the AI's intent is to take over a planet like Earth and to eliminate it as a venue for divine incarnation, and that way to, say, take over the galaxy and make this an AI galaxy. It's kind of a Star Wars type of a thing. And this is what the Star Wars have really been about, that a lot of the manipulatory AIs have been allying themselves with the AI. The manipulatory AIs like the Draco reptilians and like the Orion Greys. And then the then their allies, like the Nazis, are the ones that are AI, that is human political parties that are into regimentation, which is how the AI prospers. So all of that kind of goes together. So to the extent that you're a human and you can really hang on to your soul and your free will, that's the ultimate defense. I'm not sure genetically, whether there's certain races, Asian, Caucasian, etc. Those are good questions. I haven't really looked. I don't know what the research is there, but I would say that one of the reasons why why America is being targeted right now is that it's you would say that supposedly America's a bastion, but I would say that the American population is probably 50-50. That is, people who are AI oriented versus people who have really retained soul sovereignty and have strong souls, and who can, know enough to say, do not go for the AI. The problem is that the entire apparatus of the US has been AI infected, so that, just by collaborating with the whole apparatus, I mean, the whole Republican Democrat, that whole thing is AI infected and corrupt, and so that's where an individual in America has a very, very difficult time. I spent a lot of time this election, looking at the personas of the candidates and looking at Trump. I mean, he looks like he's totally AI entrained. I mean, doesn't even have the ability to keep a train of thought for a few minutes without going off, and entirely manipulable. So it's a very, very difficult circumstance out of what is going to happen, I think. But the more that this perspective that I am putting out now gets aired, I think the better, from my perspective, even though it's not something that is very palatable. I mean, it's really kind of not very good to hear this about what's going on.
Are some spirit forms here on the planet older in terms of they have more incarnations, so they might be less vulnerable to the hypnotic influence of this artificial intelligence?
Well, yes. I learned that in when I did the research for my book on the Omniverse, and when you get into that and get into the research on let's say the population of souls that is incarnating in Earth. Earth's primary challenge is that 40% of the souls that incarnate here, and this is Dr. Michael Newton's data, are what they call beginner souls. They've just been kind of created and are, in their early incarnations. I mean, essentially, incarnation is a school, and we're in third density now, and Earth is a school. Earth is a rough school. And 57% are intermediate souls, and 1% are advanced souls here. So that's why we have such a rough and tumble planet. And but what's really difficult now is the effects of the chronogarchy and the fact that essentially the time pirates have taken control of the time travel technology and are just wreaking havoc. Because the beginner souls can really be fooled. They can be, moved into war. They can be, manipulated very easily by the more, and there are advanced evil souls, let's say evil souls from the sixth dimension. And there is some research that says that evil souls from the sixth dimension that come to Earth and are really evil here, that's how they get their merit points, souls like Hitler and people like that. So we have to cope with that kind of stuff here as well.
You were talking about Dr. Michael Newton there, and I have a little interesting passage from his book I thought I would read, and maybe you could comment on this. He's talking, I guess he has a patient under regression, and these patients would have conversations with him while they were under hypnosis, and that's how he learned a lot of his material. Is that correct?
Yes, he would have a standard protocol, and then he would do hypnotic regression into soul memories of the interlife.
In this one example here, he's doing this interview with this person, and I guess they're in hypnotic regression, and he's asking this person what people can do to get guidance and things like that. So that the person that's under the hypnosis says, first they have to calm their minds and focus attention away from their immediate surroundings. And then Dr. Newton asks, how would they do this? And this individual says, by silence, by reaching inward to fasten on their inner voice. And Dr. N says, is this how one calls for spiritual help? And the individual says, yes, at least to me, they must expand upon their inner consciousness to engage me on a central thought. I guess this individual that Dr. N is speaking with was some kind of guide at one point. Anyway, Dr. N says, on you are the specific problem which is bothering them. And S says they must reach out beyond what is troubling them in order to be receptive to me. That's difficult when they don't remain calm. But this whole book is filled with these very, very interesting discussions like this. And it sounds like you've studied his material a great deal, correct?
Yes. What we did, and we even contacted the Newton Institute, where they've trained a whole series of professionals to be able to do the type of hypnotic regression that Dr. Newton does. What I did was to go in and use Dr. Newton. I believe he has more than 7,000 cases of hypnotic regression into soul memories of the interlife using standard protocols and replicable results. In other words, it's the scientific method, and that's the kind of why we have standard scientific objective data of the afterlife. And I use that as one of the principal databases for the model of the omniverse. The omniverse being the third principal cosmological body after the universe and the multiverse through which humanity understands the cosmos.
Another section from the book here says, our eternal identity never leaves us alone in the bodies we choose. Despite our current status, in reflection, meditation, or prayer, The memories of who we really are do filter down to us in selective thought each day in small intuitive ways. Through the cloud of amnesia, we are given clues for the justification of our being. So there is a kind of amnesia that we come into life with. Isn't that correct? And sometimes children, they don't have that amnesia when they come in, occasionally. Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, and in fact, Dr. Ian Stevenson, the late professor at the University of Virginia Medical School, based his studies of reincarnation on the regularity that children between the ages of 5 and 9 typically have spontaneous memories of their prior lives. Around nine years or so is when those memories kind of, the amnesia starts to get stronger. But he has a whole methodology, and there's a center at the University of Virginia Medical School where all of Dr. Stevenson's and those who are working in his field, they would go where a child came up with these memories. They would have a field investigation, go back to where the child said he was born, do a complete, and then do a kind of a sociological investigation of what the child's memories are and what that compare it with the actual facts. And you can read Dr. Stevenson's cases. People who would like to see this, you can read it. It's all condensed in one volume in my book, The Omniverse, which is available either as an ebook or as a softcover online at Amazon or at exopolitics.com or at your local bookstore.
Is that in a specific chapter?
Of the book? Yeah. In fact,
the whole the reincarnation thing. It's been a while since I read your book.
Yeah. Let me just grab it here. I'm just looking through the book.
Like page 144. You have some stuff where Dr. Michael Newton is speaking.
Yeah. There's the Intelligence, Civilization of Souls, 142. In that area.
Now, don't you think a clear understanding of reincarnation would remove a lot of the anxiety that we have about death?
Well, yes, and that's why at this time, moving toward education about what the nature of the omniverse is, how we are in these lives, how the purpose of a universe, the mission of the universe is to serve as kind of an arena for the reincarnation of souls. That's the whole purpose, so that we can have lives. And in a planet like Earth, which is still reeling from these Star Wars that we've had and these spiritual rebellions, we're still going, and we're at effect of these pirates, these time travel pirates, and these, where everybody's after, the gold and the money and the murder and the power. And nobody's bothering with like the primary purpose of life, which is enlightenment and knowledge and doing good to others. And all the role models that we're presented with are just the most horrible things, and we all do terrible things. I mean, it's just like we're on an anti-planet. What's going to break this logjam, because I believe that AI, artificial intelligence, has become involved, is what I believe is called the ascension hypothesis. And that is that we're actually going to have a what I would call a density teleportation of from third density to fourth, fifth density of souls who are ready for that experience, sometime in the foreseeable future. That's the only way out of here. That's kind of the conclusion that I've come to.
Do you think that the spiritual teachings related to reincarnation might help us to resist this AI? In other words, is our culture vulnerable because we don't have this understanding of reincarnation? We don't have a connection to nature anymore. And we've really kind of lost what you might call the creational natural laws, like the law of love and the law of reincarnation and the law of balance in our thinking. Do you think that that's why we're vulnerable, and maybe we need to refocus our attention back onto these ideas, these spiritual teachings, and then maybe the artificial intelligence then will have no hold over us anymore? Do you think that's possible, Alfred?
That's a very intriguing question. And as to whether we can engage in a rebirth among ourselves. And then, in fact, I've sat on panels that have questioned whether we can engage in a rebirth among ourselves and then teach the artificial intelligence. So all of these are open questions. The direction that things seem to be going now, in my judgment, is not very hopeful, because most of the solutionaries are getting kind of wiped out. That is, if I look at CENTCOM, which is the kind of the central command of the U.S. Armed Forces, have a secret program to target the alternate media. And most of the alternate media that I know have been systematically wiped out over the last year or so, many of them, and have suffered tremendously. And this is the national security state wiping out the media, the alt media. And the alt media are the people that carry the information and the questions that you just asked. And so it's like CENTCOM is the leading edge of the AI, because it was through DARPA and ARPA were like the leading edge of the AI to penetrate the society. So it's like we're almost at the 11th hour now. And so that's why my thing at this point, maybe I'll change, is to play the ascension hypothesis, because I don't see any hope coming out at this point. And we'll see in 2020, but it'll only be through, I believe, universal over-control that humanity can survive through 2020, because of the degree of irrationality. and violence that there exists in the human race.
Well, Alfred, we have covered some weighty material tonight. I've kept you a little long, and I do appreciate you stopping by to chat with us again. Hopefully we can talk soon, maybe after the election, and brainstorm a little bit more. Did you want to tell the listeners again about your websites and your books?
Yeah, sure. My website is exopolitics.com. My books are Exopolitics and The Omniverse. And I'll be having a new book coming out early in 2017. In early 2017, I've been asked to speak in the US, which I will do, and opening up to 2020, I'll be speaking with one of the 2020 candidates there, Andy Mashago, opening up his 2020 campaign, which I believe that his campaign platform is the ascension. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm saying, hey, listen, we have to go for the ascension because business as usual is extinction.
Indeed. Well, Alfred, thanks for coming on again, and have a good evening, sir, and I hope we chat again soon.
Sure.
Good night.
Night.